Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh to Dr. Sabarina. I am Nursyad Kabiti Syam from AS2291B with matrix number 2021853504. For this task assignment EVT427 Environmental Science subject, my individual assignment video for this presentation that I had chose for my topic entitled water pollution. So, what is water pollution? Water pollution is defined as any changes in water quality that can harm living species or render water that unsuitable for human use, such as drinking, irrigation, or creation. Water pollution causes illness and death in humans and other species, and it disturbs our ecosystem. It is caused mostly by agricultural activities and industrial facilities and mining, and it is becoming increasingly worse as both the human population and our pace of resource usage increases. So, move on to the next slide. What is the sources of water pollution? Water pollution in Malaysia is caused by both point and non-point sources. Sewage treatments, plants, manufacturing and agro-based business, and animal farms have all been identified as point sources, while non-point sources such as agricultural activities and surface runoff are primarily diffuse. Point sources pollution occurs when contaminations come from a single source, which water also known as an effluent, which discharged legally or illegally by manufacturing, oil refinery or wastewater treatment plant, as well as contamination from leaking septic system, chemicals and oil spills, and unlawful dumping for the examples. The EPA regulates point sources pollution by defining restriction on what can be released directly into the body of water by a facility. While point source pollution starts in a specific location, it has the potential to affect miles of waterways and the oceans. For non-point source pollution, it is a contamination that comes from a wide range of sources, and agricultural or stormwater runoff, as well as debris blown into the streams from them may be the examples. According to Malaysia Environment Quality Report 2008, the Department of Environment has recorded 17,561 water pollution sources in 2018, comprising mainly sewage treatment plants, which is 54%, manufacturing industries 39%, animal farms 5%, and agro-based industries is 2%. The distribution of the water pollution sources is shown in Figure 1. So move on to the example of event related to water pollution. If you ever experienced the effect of water pollution, so this is the example of an event that happened 2 years back in Malaysia. The 2019 Kim Kim River toxic pollution is a water pollution incident that happened on 7 March 2019 in Pasir Gudang, Johor. It caused by illegal chemical waste disposal at the Kim Kim River. Toxic gases were emitted as a result of the illegal dumping, which impacting 6,000 individuals and hospitalizing 2,775 persons. The majority of the casualties were school children, and 110 schools around the river were closed as a result. On 7 March 2019, numerous students and canteen staff from the two schools near the river became unwell and complained of breathing issues. So both schools were ordered to close, and all of the victims were taken to Sultan Ismail Hospital while state health officials investigated the cause. 21 persons were admitted to the hospitals, with several admitted to the emergency department and intensive care unit (ICU). Some of the students who were brought to the hospital had already fainted and were experiencing symptoms such as vomiting. Those who were not critically injured received outpatient care and were allowed to return to their home. During the rehabilitation, some of the critically injured patients described the experience of being unwell abruptly after inhaling a foul odor in their school compound. On the following days, 9 March 2019, the number of patients hospitalized as a result of the hazardous vapors increased to 76%. So, what is the causes of water pollution? Water is particularly susceptible to pollution. Water, sometimes known as a universal solvent, and it has the ability to dissolve more chemicals than other liquids on this planet. It what give us cool air and vivid blue waterfalls. It is also the reason why water is so easily polluted. Toxic compounds from farms, towns, and factories easily dissolve and combine with it and polluting the water. Next slide is the categories of water pollution. Firstly is groundwater. When rainfalls and seep deep into the earth, filling the fissures, rivers, and porous space of an aquifer, which is essentially an underground water storage facility, it creates groundwater, one of our least visible but most significant natural resources. Groundwater becomes polluted when chemicals such as pesticide and fertilizer, as well as trash leach from landfills and septic systems, enter an aquifer and render it unsuitable for human consumption. Ridding groundwater of impurities can be difficult and expensive. When an aquifer becomes polluted, it may be rendered unusable for decades, if not thousands of years. So next is surface of water. Surface water, which covered over 70% of the earth, is what fuels our oceans, lakes, rivers, and all the other blue dots on the world map. The most common type of contamination in these freshwater sources is nutrient pollution, which includes nitrates and phosphate. While these nutrients are required for plants and animal growth, they have become a major contaminant as a result of agricultural waste and fertilizer runoff. Toxins are also released into the environment through municipal and industrial trash. There's also the garbage that business and individuals throw directly into the waterways. Next is ocean water, which 80% of ocean's pollution, also known as marine pollution, which originates on land, whether near the coast or further inland. Contaminants such as chemicals, fertilizer, and heavy metals are carried by streams and rivers from farms, factories, and cities into our bays and estuaries, where they move out to the sea. Meanwhile, maritime trash carried in by the wind or washed into the rivers and lakes by storms and drains. Our water are also occasionally polluted by oil spills and leaks, both large and little, and are constantly absorbing carbon pollution from the atmosphere. The ocean can absorb up to a quarter of all man-made carbon emissions. Next is transboundary. Water pollution, it goes without saying, cannot be contained by a line on a map. Transboundary pollution occurs when contaminated water from one country enters the water of another country. So contamination can occur as a result of a calamity such as an oil spill or as a result of the steady downriver creep industrial and agricultural or municipal discharge. As I mentioned earlier, point source pollution occurs when contamination comes from a single source, while non-point source is contamination derived from diffuse sources. Next, what are the common types of water contaminations? Firstly is agricultural. The agricultural sector is not only the largest consumer of global freshwater resources, with farming and animal production consuming over than 70% of the world's surface water supplies, but it is also a major water polluter. Agriculture is the biggest cause of water pollution worldwide. Fertilizer, pesticides, and animal manure from farms and livestock operations wash nutrients and pathogens such as germs and viruses, which enter into the rivers every time it rains. Nutrient pollution caused by an excess of nitrogen and phosphorus in water or air. It is leading to danger water quality globally, and it can lead to global blooms, a poisonous soup of blue-green algae that can damage to human and wildlife. Next is sewage and wastewater. Wastewater is used water which is produced by our sinks, showers, and toilets, as well as by commercial, industrial, and agricultural activities, which are metals, solvents, and toxic sludge. Storms runoff, which occurs when rainfall brings rock salts, oil, grease, chemicals, and debris from inflammable surface into our rivers, which also included in the phrase. Next is oil pollution. While large spills get the most attention, customers are responsible for the great majority of oil pollution in our waters, including oil and gasoline that drips from millions of automobiles and trucks every day. Furthermore, nearly half of the estimated 1 million tons of oil that enters marine habitats each year comes from land-based sources such as factories, farms, and towns rather than the tanker disaster. At sea, tanker spills account for around 10% of the oil in the world's waterways, while ordinary maritime operations, both legal and illicit discharge, which contribute about one-third. Oil is also naturally released from beneath of the ocean floor through the ships. Next is what are the effects of water pollution? So, water pollution can affect to our human health and environment. Firstly, the effect of human health. To put it bluntly, water pollution is kills. In fact, the World Health Organization estimates that 3.575 million people die from water-related diseases a year. Water tainted with contaminants might potentially make you sick. Every year, over 1 billion people become ill as a result of contaminated water, and low-income populations are disproportionately vulnerable because their homes are frequently located closest to the most polluting industries. Waterborne pathogens such as disease-causing bacteria and viruses derived from human and animal waste are primarily cause of illness from contaminated drinking water. Cholera, giardia, and typhoid are among the diseases carried by the contaminated water. Even in wealthy countries, unintentional or illegal sewage treatment facility emission, as well as farm and urban runoff, contribute to the hazardous microorganisms to the waterways. Lastly is the effect on the environment. Our healthy ecosystem rely on a complex web of animals, plants, microbes, and fungus to exist, all of which interact with another either directly or indirectly. Any harm to any of these organisms can set off a chain reaction that endangers entire aquatic ecosystem. When water pollution generates an algal bloom in lake or sea, the proliferation of newly supplied nutrients drives plants and algae development is lowering oxygen levels in the water. Eutrophication or a lack of oxygen suffocates plants and animals and can result in dead zones or areas of water that are essentially devoid of life. In some situations, this hazardous algal bloom can also produce neutrophils that kill wildlife, including whales and sea turtles. Waterways are contaminated by chemicals and heavy metals from industrial and municipal waste. These toxins are hazardous to aquatic life, lowering an organism's lifespan and capacity to reproduce, and they move up to the food chain as predators devour prey. This is how tuna and other large fish amass large amounts of poisons like mercury. Marine debris, which can strangle, smother, and starve creatures, is also a threat to marine ecosystem. Much of the solid material, such as plastic bag and soda cans, is pushed into the sewers and storm drains before being washed out to the sea, which turning our oceans into trash of soaps and occasionally congregating to form floating garbage patches. Meanwhile, ocean acidification makes it more difficult for shellfish and coral to survive. Oceans are growing more acidic despite the fact that they absorb around a quarter of the carbon pollution produced each year by the combustion of fossil fuels. The process makes it more difficult for shellfish and other species to form shells and may have an impact on sharks, clownfish, and other marine life neurological system. Next, we move on to the slide which how to prevent water pollution. So we can help to prevent water pollution with our action. To some extent, we are all responsible for today's water contamination problem. Fortunately, there are several basic steps that we can take to avoid or reduce our contribution to water contamination. Firstly, we have to reduce our plastic bag consumption and use or recycle plastic when we can. Secondly, properly dispose of chemical cleaners, oil and non-biodegradable items to keep them from ending up down the drain. Thirdly, maintain your car so it doesn't leak oil, antifreeze or coolant. Lastly, if you have a yard, consider landscaping that reduce runoff and avoid applying pesticides and herbicides. The last slide is my references. These are the website that I referred to complete my assignment. So that's all from me. Thank you.